Chapter 17. Fishing is a state of mind. The only thing crazier than a duck hunter or a mountain climber, the old man repeatedly said, is a really dedicated fisherman. A man who will fish where he knows there are no fish, just as long as he's fishing. In fact, the dedicated fisherman is Simple Simon with a license. I didn't believe a word of this, of course, because I was kind of partial to fishing myself in those days, but only when I could catch a fish. In fact, the old man went on, I think the dedicated fisherman really hates fish. Take Captain Ahab. You perhaps know the story of Moby Dick. I don't suppose you could actually call a whale a true fish, but let's say that at least a whale can't walk and concede that he's got fins and flippers and lives in the water. Well, this Captain Ahab was a clear case of a man who hated fish, and one fish in particular. This hatred of fish ruined his life and lost him a leg. The old man was drawing the longbow, and as usual, but there was a seed in what he said. This came to mind the other day in Spain when a neighbor dropped in of a Sunday and announced proudly, I caught another fish. You'd have thought he'd just won the Nobel Prize. A fish hooked this character 2 years ago when he moved into my occasional neck of the woods. Using a borrowed rod, he landed a 3-pound dorada, a very fine sort of sea bass. From that point on, he was lost. He had a seagoing monkey on his back. Every Sunday since that awful day, he has fished. When he was in the little town of Palamos, up and down the beach in front of my house, he bought rods and reels and lines and tackle and one large milk can to keep his bait alive. He had more bait than the professionals and more equipment than Ernest Hemingway. 2 years he fished, and the other Sunday he caught his second fish, another dorada, weighing 1.5 pounds. That, you must admit, was a long time between bites. It took him 2 years and 3 hours of lonely fishing to snag this critter. And he was late to lunch and got chewed out at home. Then he gave the fish away to a neighbor, not me. There are a passel of fish in Spain, and in my neighborhood fishing is the major industry, but it is a big boat, deep sea stuff with signs. Angling off the beach, you might just catch a tourist or yourself tied into a bikini. But this does not discourage my friend Ted. He once had a hell of a day with a submerged auto tire. He is as trustingly tireless as the poor souls who fish the Seine in France. One day the Parisian thinks, I'll catch a tuna that is straight off from the Strait of Gibraltar, or at least a large sardine. A slightly more successful slave to the foul fishing habit is another neighbor, Artie Shaw, the reformed clarinetist. He lives on a lofty mountaintop a league or so away, and he has more equipment than Abercrombie and Fitch. He ties his own flies, hand wraps his own rods, and makes regular pilgrimages to Austria and France and America to see what's newest and most expensive in the angling equipment dodge. Shaw threshes the streams of the Pyrenees and the small rivers in our neighborhood. He can flick your eye out with a fly, wet or dry, at 50 yards. He hunts fish nearly every day, and from time to time he catches something, be it nothing larger than a whiskered minnow. But since he has a whole room in his castle devoted to fishing gear, I keep asking him where he is going to use those platinum-mounted mammoth reels that are suitable for the tuna tournament in the Bahamas. He just mutters and ties another fly. About the only notable trophy I ever took with the fly rod was my own ear, but occasionally the poison that invaded my veins when I was a kid in Carolina seeps back, and I can still handle a spinning reel or the old-time surf rod without seriously wounding anybody. And I came down with a craving for fishing recently that probably qualifies me to become president of the Idiots Club. As seems usual these years, I was in Africa, and I was sick of safari. Let's go fishing, I need a rest, says I to Harry Shelby, my professional hunter friend, and to Brian Burrows, who runs some hotels out Kenya way. Sure, Shelby said. I know just the place, Lake Rudolph. You'll find it fascinating. We got a permanent camp up there I built a couple years back, and a motor launch that I transported nearly 600 miles over land. She'll do nicely if she hasn't sunk, which is entirely likely. The difficulties involved in transporting about 38 feet of specially built lake boat on the order of the African Queen was the northern frontier district of Kenya atop a lurching lorry add up to a logistical feat comparable to carrying a ton of coal to Newcastle on your head, and I will not bore you with the harrowing details. They even had to build a slipway to launch her and a dock to shelter her. Every nail, every plank, every piece of equipment except thatch came up from Nairobi by truck, for Shelby to rear his village for his scientific expedition that was intent on charting the lake, its fish, and its birds. How long does it take to fly there? I asked. Oh, about an hour and a half, Shelby said. Maybe 2, but we can't fly. We haven't any vehicles up there. Everybody's left, and we'll need some food and some transport for the boys. Anyhow, it's terribly interesting country, and the fish are something really extraordinary. He cited me some statistics. One day, very recently, they had boated 15 Nile perch, only one under 25 pounds, and the rest ranging from 20 to 60 in 3/4 of an hour. Some other people had caught 16-inch perch over 100 pounds at the south end of the lake. The record was 240 pounds. Sounds like action, I said. You'll like it. The air's so dry that you really don't mind if it gets to be 120 degrees around midday. Brian Burrows, an Irishman who sunburns easily, paled a mite at this information, but he had already signed on for the trip. Our noble caravan, consisting of a Dodge Power Wagon, one Mercedes diesel truck, and a dozen unhappy natives, set off to catch a fish. To catch a fish, you drive about 90 miles from Nairobi until you turn right at a place called Gilgil. This road eventually brings you to Thompson Falls, about 160 miles from Nairobi. If you're a lucky little chap, you can go from Thompson Falls to Marshall, another 75 miles, before you pitch your camp after dark. You have sent the lorry on ahead, and you camp at the foot of the mountain because it's about 14,000 feet high at the top, and though it is cool at the bottom, it is considerably colder at the top, even in the daytime. You will have inhaled plentiful dust and suffered a great many bumps on the base of the spine, and even seen a power of dull, drab country. Juma and the other boys have made a fire, and you thank heaven for it when you dismount from the power wagon. You have just left a luxury safari with ice boxes and pretty girls and mess tents and 40-odd assorted attendants. You have shot nothing, and you pitch no tents. You dine sumptuously off hot whiskey, cold beans, and clammy bread, and hit the feathers without benefit of any tentage whatsoever. Nothing is as unhappy looking as a bunch of freezing Africans loading one lonesome lorry in the cold gray crack of dawn, feeding you makeshift ham and eggs, and literally whisking the chair out from under you in order to cram it onto the truck. Nothing is as miserable as 3 white fishermen who have slept in their clothes and have decided that teeth cleaning can wait for a hotter climb. Nothing is as miserable until you check with me later. So now we tackle the escarpment, which is really a very lovely thing if you like driving a clanking vehicle straight up to the sky around impossible curves. We hit the summit and paused to see the view, but the wind blew us right away from the view and suicidally down a hill that twisted around the badly sutured scar of the rift, product of a great volcanic upheaval. We clambered down the escarpment and stood for a drink. Burrows was pale, and so was I, because no parachutes had been issued with the power wagon. A young Samburu warrior, who looked like Lena Thorne's twin brother, stopped to pass the time of day. He asked in Swahili where we were going. Fishing, Shelby said. The Samburu Moran shook both his head and his spear. He had now heard it all. He looked around him at the lava-strewn desert, at the escarpment behind us, and toward Baraguai, which he had left a couple of days earlier, about 60 miles the other way. I have never seen a fish, he said. I don't think you'll find any around here. Perhaps if you go far enough, my father says, to the other side of Baraguai, you will come to a great lake. Perhaps there will be fish there. We gave the Samburu warrior a candy bar and bade him fond adieu. Let us press on, men, I said. The fish are waiting. And I knew I would hate myself in the morning. I did. We stopped off at Baraguai village to buy some gin, which the Duca owner naturally forgot to put in the truck. We had a small libation of cold beer and then took off, ginless, in Gaza, so to speak, figuring that we would lunch when we got down the hill. immeasurably cheered by a couple of beers, I asked the scoutmaster how far were we from our destination, where we would fish. Only 65 miles or so, Mr. Shelby said, taking a hairpin curve that headed us back to Paraguay. It's really nothing until we come to the Valley of Death. That's something. The nice thing, though, is that we'll do it after dark. You won't be able to see where I'm driving, he chuckled darkly. But then, of course, neither will I, he said. I could hear Burroughs gulp. We progressed until we passed a place called South Hore. There is another place at the other end of the lake called North Hore. We played tag with a herd of elephants, and we had what could be called a miserable lunch. This was about the time we discovered that our friend in the Duca had forgotten to pack the gin. Even the Hore Valley, which was pretty green, was still miserable country. There's a police post up there, Shelby said, pointing to a mountainside. Once in a while, there is a pretty good chance of getting through to it on the radio. If you have a two-way radio, of course. Do we have a two-way radio? No, Shelby said. That's nice, Burroughs said. It's one thing we won't have to worry about if the Galuba come over from Abenicia to kill us. Oh, Shelby said. They'd have to pass a police post at North Hore first, unless they decided to bypass it. They do that, you know. They can move about 45 miles a day on foot, and generally strike and move out before the police find out about it. We could have fished the streams in Nairobi, I said. The fishing's pretty good down Mombasa way, Burroughs said. Oh, Shelby said, but it doesn't have the stark drama of the North. In 1957 and 58, the Galuba concentration on the western shore of the lake, about 160 deaths along the Turkana were reported. There must have been more. Tomorrow, when it's light, I'll show you a hill called Por, where they wiped out the whole tribe of Turks in 1954. It's rather a rough bit of country, Shelby went on, narrowly avoiding a plunge to our mutual deaths. Anything bearing arms on this side of the Kenya-Abenicia boundary up to a line between Por and South Hore is shot on sight. Any government official making his rounds on the other side of North Hore must carry an escort of 10 men. This makes it a bit sticky when you consider that there are only 48 Kenya police for all of the Marsabit district, which includes Lasems. You know how far away that is, Bob? And the whole eastern shore of Rudolph? But of course, there's the Riku. And what exactly is a Riku? A sort of flying squad, a camel corps made up of Somalis, Wakambas, everybody fighting people. It's an elite troop. You can't do much with vehicles around here. For emphasis, he rattled our teeth on a block of stone because of the lava rocks. The Riku takes off in the black dawn to the trouble spots, siestas in the heat of the day, and generally arrives at its destination from 9 to 10 at night. More or less like the spies in the old Balgretzi books. Tell the truth, Harry said. We are not terribly civilized around here. The catfishing is pretty good on the Mara River, I said. Malindi's nice, Burroughs said. The fishing's fine in Malindi, and you can always hop over to Zanzibar or up to Lamu to watch the Dahows smuggling the elephant tusks. I hear the fishing is fine around Malindi. Ah, but they haven't got the real sense of country anymore, Shelby said, feeling the bitter hatred that swirled around him and loving every moment of it. Too many tourists, not enough mythology. Now you just take the goats. What goats? That must have been me speaking. The goats on South Island. South Island is kind of haunted. Nothing on it but goats, great big goats, and nobody really knows how they got there. Goats and ghosts. But they're there all right. Seen them myself. The ghosts, and shot some and trapped some. The goats, I mean. We clanked along in the mobile Iron Maiden while Shelby elaborated. The locals, Harry said, they believe that South Island was once connected to the mainland by a peninsula. At the base of the island was a spring where the Samburu cattle watered. The spring was sacred, and everybody was forbidden to tamper with it when it dried. But one day a pregnant Rendille woman came along with a flock of goats and started digging for water, and the spring burst forth and swallowed the whole countryside. She climbed the hill with her goats and eventually gave birth to a son, who the natives said later married his own mother and had children. As a matter of fact, somebody did live on the island because Sir Vivian Fawkes in 1921 found remnants of huts and quite a lot of artifacts and goats. Some other scientists, 2 men, tried to go over there and were never seen again. But George Adamson and his wife, you know him, Bob, he's the New Frontier District game warden who has the tame lioness, were over there about 3 years ago, and they found a cairn of rocks and a whiskey bottle, so the 2 scientists must have been lost on their way back to the eastern shore. Also, Harry said, you can see firelight over there, although there's nobody living on the island. I don't want to see any firelight on a place nobody lives on, I said. How about the goats? You wouldn't believe them, Harry said. They got horns twice as tall and beards twice as long as any goats I ever saw. Sort of trophy goats. I believe the fishing is wonderful on the Anti-River, Burrows said, and it has the advantage of being very close to Nairobi. Very few goats, though, I'm told. We'd better stop, Harry said. It's about night time, and that damned lorry seems to be too far behind us. A pity, really, that we have to get there in the black of night as a true experiment into fear that descent into the Valley of Death really wants seeing by day. We had come through some more horrid country and were now perched atop a high hill. Hill? Hell's delight, it was a mountain. We looked hopefully for the flickering yellow tongues of the lorry's lights. Nothing showed. The wind howled. I wish I was back there with the camels, Burrows said. They at least looked like contented camels. We had passed through a vast herd numbering into the thousands of Samburu wealth, which in that area is camels. For pure wealth, you can't beat a camel. You can milk it, eat it, wear its hair, ride it, make it carry your belongings, and it has the definite advantage of getting fat on thorns and only drinking every other semester. Here comes the lorry, Shelby finally said. Brace yourselves, chaps, into the Valley of Death. It was midnight when we hit the camp in the little Sweetwater stream. It had taken us 14 hours of driving to cover 65 miles. The last 3 hours was absolutely straight down a lava-strewn mountain with the vehicles hanging onto the rocks by their heels like clip springers. The last few miles were along the lake's beach, which was composed of slippery shale on which the autos skidded as though on ice. Home, Harry said, as we came up to what appeared to be a thatched palace. I'll just go cut in the generator and we'll have some lights. In a moment he was back, smiling cheerfully, the bearer of ill tidings. The generator won't cut in, he said. I guess we'll make it on the hurricane lamps. Juma, the headman, came in and said something rapidly in Swahili. I could sort out the word Ramadan used several times over. Boys ain't pleased, Harry said. It gets hot here, and on the Muslim national holiday month, Ramadan, you can't drink or eat from dawn to dusk. Also, most of the blokes spent 6 months here with the expedition, and they've been out with you for 3 months. Juma's face looks like an old boot. So does mine, I said. I hear the fishing is good outside of Denver, Colorado, Burrow said. In the time we've spent, we could have gone there. Ah, you'll love it by daylight, Harry said. When the freezer gets going, that's if the generator works, and we go out on the lake in the boat. Her name is Lady of the Lake. That is, if she's not sunk. Let's eat something before we turn in, I said. What have we got that is quick and easy? Well, I know there's some tinned salmon and some sardines, Harry said. That's when Burrows and I both bore him savagely to the floor, intent on murder. Fish? Well, I said when Juma came early next morning with the tea. So is this where we are finally? Mbaya, Juma said. In Swahili, Mbaya means bad. Rudolph Mbaya. Hapana Mbaya, I said. Hi Missouri Sana. That means very good. Any amount? Fish, Juma said, making a cuss word out of the noun. All this way to go fishing, when I could be with my wives. I have been here before. I could have been here for maybe 6 months before. The face of the place doesn't change, the water doesn't change, and the people don't change. Mbaya Kapisa Sana. This was the third phase of one of the longest non-fishing trips in history. We were now into the third day of torture, and we had not yet wet a line. We had not seen the lake, which is a lake that very few people have seen. It is, by survey, 365 feet deep in spots and 135 miles long by 35 miles wide at its broadest. It is crammed with leaping tigerfish, Nile perch, and tilapia, a very fine-tasting fish, supposedly. Mbaya, Juma said, all the laughter gone from his snub-nosed, half Congolese Arab, half Kikuyu face. Bad people the other way. Jaluba, that kill. Rendell, that kill. Turkana, that kill. Boron, bad. Samburu, bad. Locals, stupid. All bad. Also too hot. Make as a hot as a fire all day, and Muslimi can't drink. Jumba's face now looked like a melted rubber boot. Not until sundown the Muslimi can't drink. The staff was not only beat but frustrated rich from a year's steady safari employment, no chance to spend any money. Beat in wanting to go home to their wives and cattle and goats. Beat in not wanting to be again in the haunted, hot country that is strewn lava rocks that looked like the mountains of the moon, its mysterious, tricky lake full of crocodiles and hippo, and a murderous tribe called Galuba just around the corner in Ethiopia. You won't like the people here, Juma said. All Shinzis, Buri, fish-eaters, savages. But the fishing's good, I said, and it's very comfortable here. I would rather live in a tent with the hyenas and the baboons outside, Juma muttered, and shuffled away in his working clothes. The camp was the former site of a scientific expedition mounted by the University of Miami, and as far as I was concerned, when we got around to inspecting the area, an absolutely charming camp, by far the most lavish I had seen in Africa. Harry Shelby and John Sutton, in the interest of the expedition, had created a palm and grass thatched paradise in the middle of nowhere with a chuckling stream running coolly through the middle. Great palms shaded the enormous main hut. Its ridgepole must have been 25 feet high. There was a lab where the scientists had worked, a great dormitory for the men, a lockable kitchen, and several scattered cottages for married couples and the occasional female guests. The generator was cut in now, the freezer and the refrigerator were humming, and all the lights worked in the various buildings. The showers functioned, and the radio brought the BBC News from London. Shelby and his assistants had built themselves about the deluxest fishing camp and show business. There was even a barber's chair with the prospect of the lake and a magic island in clear view. We ain't so crazy, said Brian Burrows, the hotel keeper. Now that we're here, I ain't going home no more. He gestured at the vast, cool main building with its low sweeping eaves, designed like lifted skirts so that a constant breeze was swept in over the thwarts to circulate air in the room. Even if there ain't any fish, said the Liverpool Irishman, I ain't going home no more. There will be fish, said Shelby, appearing well shined, shaved and showered. Don't fret your heads about the fish. How do you like my layout? Great, said I. If I can fly in the next time, and if there are any fish, I have to wait until I see the fish. You'll see the fish, Shelby said. We'll go down to the lake in a minute and see if the lady of the lake is still with us. If she's sunk, we can still surf cast. The big ones come into the weeds anyhow. All you have to do is mind the crocodiles. They come into the weeds too. I think I'll stay clear of the weeds, said Brian Burrows said. I ain't lost nothing in them there weeds. Somebody's going to have to teach this chap to speak English again, Shelby said. Ever since he's known you, he's a vast discredit to his reading. Look who's talking, Burrows said. I mind well that an ain't or so creeps into your occasional context. Me, beamish boy. I ain't knocking the word ain't, Shelby said. Ruark makes money off of it. Let's go fishing. The lady of the lake, after having her bilges pumped, was an agreeable girl. She endowed Shelby with the title of the cautious captain because he was unwilling to go outside El Molo Bay, and smartly so, because Rudolph runs up a wind you couldn't believe until you picked up your teeth. Inside is good enough for me, I said. I ain't lost nothing outside that big hill. Evidently, we're a caravan of cowards. Nobody dissented, including Mathik, my old and trusted gun-bearer, who wouldn't get on the boat at all. This gap-toothed Wakamba, who may be the bravest man I ever met, said that he was an elephant hunter and a cannibal, but he had lost nothing on that big Magi either. Mathik would sit at the shore and pluck the whistle teal and the occasional knob-nosed goose I had shot. He was content to watch the boat from a distance. He had been along when they freighted her overland. Mathink is very rich and has a lot of wives, sheep, goats, and cattle. He wanted to live to enjoy them. You might possibly have seen pictures of Shelby and me, but I must describe Burrows, the vagrant fisherman. He looks a cross between Brendan Bond and an Assyrian emperor, and when you deck him in shorts and the kind of floppy straw hat that Jamaican peasants wear, the ensemble is, in a word, horrid. He is one of the truly brave people I know, and has the disposition of a baby lamb, or he wouldn't be off in the wilderness with me and Shelby in the first place. During the Mau Mau emergency, a busload of nice old ladies arrived at Brian's hotel just as a Kenya settler shot a running native across the street in front of the opera house. One of the horrified old ducks turned to Brian. "Tell me, young man," she quavered, "is this a safe hotel?" "Great God, no," the manager said, stripping off his jacket to display bandages. "Look what the blighters did to me last night." And they had, too. Old BB got mashed up 3 times in the peaceful administration of his business. We proceeded to fish. Burrows got stuck into something we all decided was a rock because nothing moved, even when the cautious captain gave the lady full speed ahead. Ali, the only competent sailor among us, he's a Swahili from Mombasa, and so knows boats, went over the side and into the dinghy to see if he could unsnag the line. And then the rock came alive. Burrows had been pumping steadily for 15 minutes on what turned out to be a 60-pound Nile perch that had merely decided to lie doggo. We caught fish all right. I caught 2, a tiger and a perch. I lost a mess because the tigerfish have a way of digesting tackle. We caught more fish in the shallows. That was because we sent the local ladybucks to Molo's fishing with nets, and we wanted to freeze some fish to take home to various mamas, and the freezer was working wonderfully. It was working wonderfully because we suspended fishing the following day so that Shelby and Mathik could dismantle the generator, which had become temperamental again. It does not take much to please Shelby. Get him greasy to the ears and surround him with displaced bits and pieces of an engine, and he carols like a lark. Once he got the generator sorted out, we didn't go fishing again because of one thing and another in the pursuit of culture such as literary talk and the adjustment of the windsock at the airstrip, on the off chance any pretty girls might fly in to visit us. This consumed the best part of a day, and nothing ever came of it. The only pretty girl I saw was on the way home, and she was twins. I started to buy both of them as a house present for Mama, Shelby, but decided against it. They were more or less naked Samburu maidens and entirely too pretty to be an acceptable house present. The generator on the boat, the lady, had a refrigerator too, was a bit dicky also, so that took some work, and one of the reels jammed, and that took some work, and then I decided to go duck hunting, and that took some work, and then we went croc hunting, and that took a lot of work. I will tell you a thing about Shelby. Passing a camel through a needle's eye is child's play alongside hunting anything with Shelby. If he hasn't got a mountain to walk you over, he'll take the year off and build one. You would think that croc stalking could best be done in a boat. That is not so. We landed the boat around the corner of a mountain and stalked carefully over the king-size cobble until we were in a position to miss the crocodiles and still have a decent excuse to fetch back to Burrows, who is now flag admiral of the Lady of the Lark, as she tugged her anchor and threatened to break up on a lee shore. I will say one thing for Shelby, the cautious captain. He can shoot. He is currently in love with a tiny little toy, a Winchester 243, which has the flattest trajectory of any rifle I ever saw. Shooting well downhill off this mountain at a target area no bigger than a tangerine, he nailed one croc under the bumps at a good 500 yards. It made the water, but only barely, and surfaced at 600 yards. Harry now had a target area the size of a small lemon when he squeezed off the croc turned over and showed a lot of white belly and a death thrash. Turned out not to be the same croc. The first one was sick enough to take the same lee shore the lady was headed for. I took the dinghy and went away to dispatch him and learned a cardinal truth in croc shooting. The real place to aim is not under the bumps, but just behind that smile, where the wicked mouth turns up at the end of the long, lascivious grin. I got a good rest on my knees and popped the gentleman behind his smile, and you could see complete paralysis set in as his forelegs spread and one long ripple went through his body. Even so, he was far from being a pocketbook. I finally beached the boat and walked up and blew the top of his head off at a range of 1 foot, and now he was a pocketbook. We towed him home and gave him to the molo to eat. That was the end of another day's fishing. The next day, there were pictures to be taken, and the rains were moving closer, and the lodge had to be neated up, and the provisions battened down, and the generator secured, and the local troops paid. All this time, Juma and company were sulking because Ramadan isn't any fun even when it's cool, and Lake Rudolph is certainly not cool if you're not drinking ice water. We had a freezer full of frozen fish the Molo had caught for us, and a few whistling teal, which make the most delightful eating of any fowl I ever tasted. I had caught 2 fish, Shelby had caught none, Burrows had caught 3, and the Molo boat boys, using a hand line, had caught several. The time had come to leave. We struggled painfully straight up the Valley of Death, made a camp outside of Barogi, and it was in Marshall that we saw the twin Samburu chicks, and everybody said "Watcha" at the same time. Watcha means no. We had been away from home too long, especially the multiple wived Muslims. We developed a blockage in the oil feed that caused several pleasant stops, and some years later we arrived at Harry's farm in Limuru, magnificently filthy, bone-weary, and green whiskery. Mrs. Mickey Shelby met the heroes at the door. "Catch any fish?" she said. "Some," we said. "Enough." Next day in Nairobi, everybody said, "Where have you chaps been?" "Fishing," I said stoutly, ready to swing on anyone who would say me nay. And I never had a better time in my life. It was true, because as the old man was often heard to say, fishing doesn't actually happen. It just goes on in your head.